Good evening. Welcome to Cut Deep. Our scheduled episode for this evening has been rescheduled for tomorrow, Wednesday at 8 p.m., right here on 284 Media. I encourage you to listen in to that special episode. Tonight, we will be focusing on the reopening border protocols announced last night by the Premier, the Honourable Andrew Fahie. We're going to discuss the fallout from it and its impact on the economy, but more importantly, the tourism sector. The concept of Cut Deep was developed with a focus on encouraging the wider public to think more in depth on issues that plague us, encouraging persons to have and to use that voice to invoke change. Cut Deep is an interactive platform cutting through the noise and political rhetoric. It is raw, uncut, challenging you to think critically. What do the issues mean for us? What part do we play? It is a platform that will move the Virgin Islands toward unified, integrated success. I am Cindy Roseanne Jones, your host. Welcome to Cut Deep. We will be right back with our first guest.
The win! Oh!
What are the hell?
I'm freaking out!
Is time.
284 Music.
Coming to you live and direct from the beautiful British Virgin Islands.
What's poppin', what's really good, what's happening, what's up?
Welcome back to Cut Deep. I have a special guest with me tonight. That is Mr. Andrew Ball. He's the Vice President of the Marine Association of the BVI and Director of BVI CCHA. Andrew, the Premier landed a bomb on the territory last night. That is how I would classify it, a bomb that has serious ramifications for this territory from an economical perspective, as well as the potential cripple of the tourism industry for years to come, maybe. Andrew, I am speaking to you tonight in my capacity as the host of Cut Deep and as a citizen of these Virgin Islands. I'm going to ask you to please introduce yourself to our listening guests, and then we'll get right into the discussion.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Ball, and as Cindy has so politely pointed out, I am the Vice Chairman of the Marine Association of the BVI and was recently appointed as a General Director of the Chamber of Commerce and Hotel Association.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to jump right into the discussion for tonight. The discussion is on the reopening of the borders, the protocols, or dripping of information that was put out last night. So let us just highlight quickly what was said last night. If I miss anything, you let me know. The territory will open on December 1 through the airport only. Online portal to apply to visit, must be approved to visit. Testing within 7 days of arrival, testing on arrival, 4-day quarantine, testing on day 4. If clear, limited movement. We have no idea what that means. Testing again on day 8, and if clear, vacation begins, wearing a mobile tracing system. So, Andrew, so that our audience is on the same page with us, I am going to ask you to explain the profile of the BVI tourist.
Sure. I will speak to our average bareboat guests because in terms of the marine industry, they make up about probably 90% of the tourists that come here. Most of them are American, which obviously has implications in terms of COVID and the risk structure associated. They come here for, on average, I think the Tourist Board put out some numbers that said 8-point-something days, but let's call it a week. They generally fly in, they arrive, they go to their boat, they provision their boat, and they go out sailing. Now, the main thing that people do, they come here for now in the sailing industry is not how it was back when all this started. when all this started, people came here for the love of sailing. They came here to be on the boat and be in the elements, and pretty much solely that. You know, back in the day when Foxy was there on the beach with a cooler, and that was it.
Yeah.
And to a large extent, that's kind of what we tried to sell after Irma. When everything was knocked down, we just said, okay, it's vintage BVI.
Yes.
But now the product really is more about going from A to B to C to D, and enjoying the stops or attractions at each point. So whether it's going to the Willie T, going to Cooper Island Beach Club, or going to the Baths, going to Anegada for a lobster dinner, going over to Loblolly Bay, going to Soggy Dollar, or anywhere in White Bay. That is a large part of what people come here for now. And so obviously this 4-day restriction is, we need a little bit more details really, but it severely hampers that product. If we tell our guests that they have to come here and stay on their boat for 4 days without getting off, without doing anything, and then we might let them out after that, they're not coming.
Yeah, I want to think that I don't think going straight to the boat is an option.
On the most part, what we're trying to set up right now, and what the majority of the bareboat companies have agreed in terms of if COVID, is you arrive at the airport, you get straight in your taxi, which should have some form of protection for the taxi driver. And then you go straight to the marina where your boat is, and you go straight on your boat. So you try and eliminate the hotel in the middle, just so there's less points of contact.
Okay, so that is what you would like to see.
So we've had extensive industry consultation meetings. I've probably got about 3 or 4 whole days on Zoom of my life, with the various industry sectors trying to put this together. And one of the things that I found really encouraging is that the private sector is very keen to present solutions to make this work. They recognize the fact that this has to be sustainable. So there's no point in cutting corners, because if we do, we'll be closed by Christmas. And if we close by Christmas, nobody's come for the rest of the year.
Right.
And so everybody's been quite creative. They're trying to digitize the process as much as possible and really minimize the contact.
So outside of, before we get to that,
Sure.
We just wanted to highlight what the Premier said is in place.
Right.
As of last night. So that's what you would love to see, and maybe quite a few other people. But just to discuss briefly what the Premier announced last night. Now, it was frustrating for me, and I know for a lot of other people, because I didn't see it as a plan presented. I just saw, what I heard was the trickling down of more information, and information that left you with 100 more questions.
Incomplete information.
Yeah, you walked away really frustrated, and you just didn't know a lot of answers to questions that you had in your mind and that you thought would have come out last night. So why I asked you to explain to our listening audience the makeup or the profile of the tourist that comes here is that so that they could understand what was said and how that would relate to our normal tourists. Now, I see a few segments affected in terms of, yes, our bareboat is the biggest, right? We have the cruise, which isn't coming back, but I'm just talking about the profile of our tourists, our visitors. You have the overnight, and these are the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. John mostly, that come in, and even guests that just come in, families, and that come into the territory from the neighboring islands. Puerto Rico, again, yes, the high rates of COVID, but they also spend a lot of money in our economy on weekend trips and so forth. Especially, we have the season coming up: Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's.
And let's not forget, we're testing them before they come, and we're testing them on arrival. So
Right.
if there's a high rate of COVID in Puerto Rico, we've kind of got that bit figured out when they get
Right, exactly. So, so in explaining that, who our tourist is, you want to come back to what was put out last night and how difficult it would be to maneuver around having visitors come to the island.
Correct.
You test before you get there. Test when you get here. You quarantine for 4 days. You test again. You quarantine again with selective movement, and we don't know what that is. And then you test again. One
of the things that wasn't really, I didn't feel was really outlined was what a government-approved quarantine facility is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that on your boat? Does that mean you have to go and stay in a hotel?
Mm-hmm.
How much more does it cost? I mean, there's a big issue of cost here in terms of,
Yep.
If people are going to do all these tests cost money.
I understand it's $135 a test.
Well, there you go. I mean, if it's $135 a test, and we have umpteen tests, and then we have a tracking and tracing system, and we have
Quarantine costs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're pricing ourselves out of the market, and one of the things that we really have to look at here is there's two main factors here. One is, what are we competing with in terms of the product that we offer? Who else is offering it, and who is doing it successfully in the age of COVID?
Mm-hmm.
If we look on either side of us, we have St. Martin and USVI. And while they have had their battles with COVID, I'm not sure that those battles have been while they are on their current protocols.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be working.
Mm-hmm.
And they are very basic protocols. They're not costly. They're not invasive to the experience. And so you have to ask yourself, are you going to go to the BVI and spend thousands of dollars on quarantine and testing and all these things? Or especially as the vast majority of our market is American, are you going to go to the USVI? And yeah, the scenery is not quite the same, but they're doing pretty well at building that up, actually. They're starting to build facilities to rival ours. The crude yacht industry has been moving there steadily for a number of years for other reasons. And so we have to be competitive. We have some very special things to offer here, but there has to be balance. In a normal market, what we have to offer here is very special, and it is, I personally believe, worth a little bit more than what everybody else has.
Yeah, it is. And I'll say to you that, and this has been my conversation, and like I said, I'm speaking to you as a citizen of the BVI. I think the BVI is a very special and unique product, just in the way we're set up in our channel for sailing. I mean, it's the best place to spread out, right? Yes, look at other locations and see what they're doing, see what's working for them, what's successful. But then you have to bring it all together with your product.
Yeah.
And make it work for your product. Just to say, oh, we're going to follow whatever this one is doing just because. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Sitting 8 days on quarantine, if you're coming sailing for 8 days,
Yeah.
you're not going to say, and then you think about maybe the outer islands, like Necker. And we have to be careful too, because not even over there are people coming to stay for weeks.
Yeah.
Most times they're in for the weekend and they're gone. So a lot of our product is really within 7 days to 10 days max tourists.
Yeah.
In and out, weekenders, overnight. So I almost feel like, should we open the borders or should we not open the borders? And the ramifications on both ends.
You just touched on a whole multitude of points there. The first being the private islands, the out islands. And they are, in some ways, their own isolated facilities, if they were treated that way. You can contain an infection there. They are inherently safer. And I think that brings us back around to your comment about not comparing what we're doing to what others are doing.
Right.
In a marketing sense, obviously, we have to, but in a practical sense, we actually can't. Our marine product here is unique. It is, I believe it is globally unique. And the way that a virus would travel on yachts, especially the way that yachts travel around the BVI, considering that most places you'd go, you get on your yacht and you might stop one place each day.
Right.
Here, you can stop 3 or 4 places each day. So you've got a little incubating center, and then you can stop all over the place. We have to think differently about how we do that. Now, there are plenty of good ideas as to how we do that.
Okay.
And so I agree. We have I said it from the beginning, the BVI is unique, the product is unique. And while COVID may be a common problem to the world, how it affects us and our market and what we do here, at least in terms of the marine industry, is unique. And I think it requires a unique approach.
I think we're, I don't feel like we've managed this well from the very beginning. I say there is no surprise here when I say that. I don't think that we've managed it. From the constant lockdowns to, certain restrictions and protocols and, the protection of the border and just all of these things, I don't feel like the management of this pandemic has gone well for us.
I think there has been a lot of help offered. And I don't know what the correct adjective or verb to describe it is, whether it's ignored, refused, or just unseen. I really don't know, but we have encountered a number of problems, and this is a unique. It is an unprecedented situation. Don't we love that word this year? But at the same time, that really calls for all hands on deck, and I think the Premier used that term last night. Actually, my belief is that the private sector does not feel that we have all hands on deck. We have resources to bring to bear, we have ideas, and we have will, and it's not being utilized. And this is going to take all of us to get it right. And unfortunately, last night's announcement was just not right. Some of that may sound like opinion, some of it is. But as they say, the proof is in the pudding. And this morning, the cancellations rolled in. About 2 weeks ago, I sat in a meeting with all of the members of caucus and representatives of other areas of the private sector. And I said, we had polled the bareboat industry, and from the data that we had received and then extrapolated to the rest of the industry, we were expecting in the first week of December alone, just for bareboats, so not for crude yachts, not for hotels, not for private islands, just over 2,500 people. They had also provided the data that 80% of them, or more than 80%, would cancel if they could not get in on a ferry from St. Thomas, or if there was a strict 4-day quarantine. There are ways to do something like a 4-day control period. We can set up activities that are safe, or places that people can go that are safe, and they are still isolated from each other.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I'm saying that we have a very unique product.
Yeah.
A product that you can just, scatter people around the BVI, distance people, and they're still able to have a great vacation. Nobody wants to come and
it's going to be easier now. There's a lot less people coming.
Well, one of the things in the Premier presenting the information last night, because I do not want to refer to it as a plan, the information, and I'm not even saying that to be disrespectful, but I just didn't think that it was a plan. It was just some information coming out to us. The borders are opening on December 1 via the airport. 7 days later, as has been said by the Junior Minister of Tourism, she said on Thursday in Just Van Dyke that December 8th, the seaports will open. Now, I think that's a great decision they've made, and they've listened to the people, because it is impossible not to open the seaports.
Correct.
However, it was not a part of the conversation last night at all. It wasn't mentioned. I think the Premier said what applies. This would apply to the seaports as well. I think that if I'm not mistaken.
If I don't actually recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall the yachting industry being mentioned at all, which pre-Irma.
Well, no industry was mentioned.
Right, but if we're talking about overnight tourism, and government-approved hotels, resorts, etc., Pre-Irma, the marine sector represented, I think, 60% of overnight tourism. And we still have a lot of big resorts that are closed because they're rebuilding from Irma. So presumably, because we've replaced pretty much all the boats now, it's much more than 60%. One would think that there would be a little bit more consideration put there. And to be honest, from our perspective, I don't feel too bad saying this because I've said it before, a little bit more communication. The dialogue is not really there.
But the Premier
Not
said
for lack of
last
trying.
night, though, that he has been speaking to the private sector and they know everything that he was saying last night.
Since COVID started, we have had 2 direct conversations with the Premier. One was about some issues with the shipping registry, and it was more about how we could encourage crude yachts to base here rather than in the USVI. That was a pre-COVID problem. And the second one was at a business stakeholders meeting 2 weeks ago. So to me, with the chunk of the economy that is represented here and the unique issues that are before us, I would feel that there should probably be a bit more collaboration there. Like I said, there are ideas out there. There are people with means and the will to help solve these problems. The majority of the Caribbean opened up in July, and we're here talking about December 1st, but we don't actually really know how that's going to look yet.
Correct. I think we're definitely behind the 8 ball. One of the things that was talked about in the early days of COVID when it came out last winter was that it thrives more in the winter. So now we're in the winter and you have surges around the world, which is expected. And we're going to open. And we just don't know how. There's a lot of questions around it. Like you said, most of the Caribbean, they've been opening since June. So they've been able to test, close, test, see what works, see what doesn't work. When all of this happened last night, I went to do some research. And, I looked at a few of the destinations. Again, I think that the BVI is unique, and what isn't working there could probably work here. Bermuda, let's take Bermuda, for example. Bermuda has an online portal as well. I think most places do. Pre-qualification before you get here. So you apply to come. You have to get approval to come. You must take your test before you get there. When you get there, you'll be tested there at the airport. And then it says it'll take 24 to 48 hours to get the result back. And if the result is negative, you're free to go. You have to follow protocol. Follow protocol. Yeah. There are fines in place. And I feel if the fines are hefty enough, you think twice. I think I've seen places like Jamaica send people out because they weren't following protocols. Yes. So, if we have something staunch like that, stringent measures in place, I think, to me, that is thinking about your product. And their tourism product is on the rebound now. Yep.
And Bermuda had a great recovery plan very early on in the game as well. They sort of put their plan together, and yes, of course, the goalposts shift a little bit as you go. As a colleague says, no good plan survives first contact.
Correct.
Right? But at least there's a foundation to work with. Like you said, there's a lot of different places doing a lot of different things, but there are some basic building blocks that are common to all of them, or almost all of them. And it's really about which ones you use and where, at least from my perspective. So as an example, you obviously have your testing regime. That is one risk mitigation strategy, whether you test once, whether you test 4 times, what kind of tests you use, how fast they are, how accurate they are. You have your community protocols, things like, when you and I go out, we go to the bar, do we stay 6 feet apart? Do we wear a mask, or do we just throw it all to the wind? Different countries are doing different things. Look at Sweden. You have your safe working protocols. which is really then about how we do business and how we interact with the tourist, or at least in our case, how we interact with the tourist. And, are we going to consider the tourists sort of almost in their segregated own bubble, or are we going to intermix them and rely on the fact that we've protected ourselves from them while we're interacting with them? You have your tracking and tracing, which is a system that I think in our particular economy is incredibly useful. If you work behind the bar at a resort and I wander in off my boat and I've got COVID and I haven't yet tested positive and I infect you, you then go home, you go to your kids, you infect your kids go to school, they infect everybody else's kids. But as far as I'm aware, and I don't know because we haven't been shown the plan, as far as I'm aware, right now the intent is only to monitor the visitor in terms of tracking and tracing.
Right.
So we later test him or her, and we find out that he's positive. But we know nothing about you, your kids, all the other kids. Tracking and tracing is about creating a chain of evidence, basically. The second you break the chain, it's dead. The only way I can see that being effective is if we're all on it. Or at the very least, the people that are working in tourism.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to assume, because if there's a case now, they will trace where the person has been. I'm going to assume that will be the protocol. If you're gonna, because even if as a population we're not intermingling with the guests, there's some of us that will come in contact with guests. Hotels, restaurants, even maybe us at a tourist board, we have our destination hosts and so forth. So,
and you don't remember. I mean, we've got transmission through surfaces as well.
Right.
So maybe someone just coughed on their hand, touched the door handle. You come along 5 minutes later, you don't even know what the guy looks like. There are so many different, let's call them weapons in our arsenal to fight this and keep ourselves safe. And I guess what I was trying to come around to here is that quarantine is only one of them.
yeah.
And as we can see, different jurisdictions are experimenting with that. And so we may be able to take more risk in terms of allowing people to, let's call it isolate, or have controlled activities in that 4 days rather than just locking them up.
Right.
And then put more effort to cover that new risk that we've exposed into our safe working protocols, our community protocols, our tracking and tracing, our testing protocols, our border security. We have all these different things available to us. It's not the only avenue.
Right.
And so really, if we look at what everybody's doing, they're looking at all these different things that are available to them and weighing them up and saying, well, how do we mix them in a way that sort of works best for us? Obviously, my suggestion in terms of the marine industry and its portion of the economy is that doesn't work. And I think that the market has spoken.
Yeah. So what we'll do, we'll take a quick break and we're going to come right back and we'll talk about a plan that may work best or what has been presented, the BVI CCHA petition that went out, the real ramifications on the tourism industry and on the economy when we come right back.
Right now, many people are trapped in their homes with an abuser. This is the shadow pandemic. In one weekend, calls to domestic abuse helplines in the UK went up by 65%. In the US, Asia, and pretty much everywhere, reported numbers are rising. These aren't just numbers, they're people you might know. If you think someone is in trouble, check in on them. Ask them if they're okay and if everything at home is okay. Educate yourself about domestic violence. Know the details of local services like helpline numbers or shelters. If she tells you or you suspect that her life or the lives of her children are in immediate danger, call the protection units or the police. The shadow pandemic is spreading right now. Let's help each other safely right now.
I think the Bermuda model is pretty much
Good
it.
evening, and we're back. Tonight we're talking about the reopening of the borders and the information that was put out by the Honourable Premier last night. I have Andrew Ball as my guest tonight, and we are going to continue this discussion and see maybe how we can salvage or make this work for all involved. So, you and I, Andrew, we were just quickly talking about once the Premier had wrapped his presentation last night, the place erupted.
Yeah.
It just went like wildfire. My phone exploded. I'm sure yours went crazy.
I think your description of salvage is about right. If I were to use the analogy, or a COVID analogy, let's say, before that announcement went out, the marine industry, and I would probably venture to say the tourism industry in general, was on life support. It was on ventilator, it was unconscious, and it was clinging to life. Last night, it flatlined. Now we are doing CPR. That is what we're doing. We're trying to save what's left. So I know that's horrible to hear, but I think it's very important that everybody understands that this is
The
not
reality of the situation.
exactly. This is not us being dramatic. This is what it is. And I think there's probably enough stuff flying around social media now that people can see the evidence of that.
I struggled with the announcements. I struggled with the onslaught after. And then you had a lot of people, of course, people have opinions and ideas, and nothing is wrong with that. And I want the Virgin Islands Party administration to understand nothing is wrong with taking in ideas, you know, from residents and citizens. Nothing at all is wrong with it. When the Premier had wrapped his conversation, there was one gentleman, and he started talking about, you know, what about the bareboats and the charters? Can they not be out there and we find a way? Because he's thinking, well, what's going to happen now? Because it can't work for, you know, that sector. And then it threw me off even more when the Honourable Vincent Whitley, he came under that post and he said, oh, we're working on it. Yes, that's going to happen. And I'm totally speechless now because the Premier just presented. He didn't say anything. And these are the irritations for people.
Yeah, I think the statement did more damage than the policy, really. If we're still finding a way to work with this, then that's what we need to say. But saying this is the way it is when it doesn't work, which I think is, as I said, clearly evidenced now, that has done more damage than anything. Mm-hmm. I am glad that we are still finding a way to work with this.
Well, you hope that they are, because the Premier said last night that this plan has been in place since March. If you have a plan...
Do you have a copy of this plan?
No, I don't.
I haven't seen it.
We've all been waiting.
Yeah.
Even if we haven't seen it, we've been waiting at least for it to be presented to us in a wholesome way that we understand and that we can get behind of. And yes, work with everybody involved, and we work together and make it happen, because one person definitely cannot do this, or one entity.
Exactly.
So if you have a plan in place, from March to now is what, 7 months?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
How is it that you come out and drip this information? Okay? How is your minister saying something different to you? Because to me it was different. The Premier didn't address it. He didn't say anything about the seaports. He didn't say anything about how the yachts would move around, or if people would come in and be able to go directly on the yachts. And this gentleman, he said that, and the minister responded in the affirmative, that is in the plan. And you're like, we're here waiting for the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say I'm not entirely sure what they're talking about. Honourable Wheatley has actually been a really good communicator with us in terms of immigration issues and labour issues. and we're having some good discussions about how we get staff back here as needed, especially crews. But we have not discussed, at least to my knowledge, I don't know who they're talking to. It's not us. we haven't discussed we haven't had the opportunity to discuss the border and how we would bring tourists in. And the discussions that we have had have only been so far as the sort of safe working protocols, as far as how our staff would work to keep them safe from COVID. A discussion was started late last night and again this morning with some health officers in terms of how we could make the 4-day isolation period work. We really don't like the term quarantine. It's not a good marketing term.
No.
But
and I do find that number of testing, I don't agree with it. Now you're talking about a swab going up your nose every 3 days.
So like we were saying, we've got all these different tools available to us, and testing is one of them. The idea of the PCR testing specifically with the nasal swab is it's invasive, it's uncomfortable, it's not the kind of thing that people want to do. And we do have some rapid testing that is non-invasive. There are many different avenues now in terms of, and much lower cost, I might add, that we could utilize. Now, again, in some cases, these tests are less accurate. But if we're doing more than one of them, all of a sudden we're doubling up again.
Yeah.
So there are choices that we have here. We don't have to be married to this idea, which is quickly becoming quite old school PCR testing, because as this problem stays with us, the market, the technology, everybody's finding new ways to do this, and those new ways are becoming more efficient and more effective. And so I think a large part of the problem that we have here is the delay in communication between the private sector and the public sector. Again, these things are available, and in some cases we actually have access to them. We have the means to make it work.
Yeah.
We have these suggestions, but it feels like by the time a suggestion is heard, it's almost already outdated, because it takes so long for us to come around and address this. And this is a very simple solution that I see to this problem. It's, get some industry representatives, get some government representatives, some cabinet representatives, get some health representatives, get the tourist board, put them all around a table together. We can sit here and hash it out right now. The problem is that we all have solutions to various problems, but we don't know the little problems that affect everybody else around the table. And until we can sit there and discuss them and be constructive, we're not going to solve them. It doesn't matter what we go out in the news and say. It doesn't.
So you feel that is not happening?
No, it's not happening. I have never sat around a table with all of the different pieces. I've met with the tourist board, and I've met with health, and we've had some very limited meetings with cabinet members on this particular subject. But we're not engaging in a proper roundtable constructive discussion to solve the issue. We can talk to, and this is an example. It's not something that actually happened. We could go and talk to tourist board, and we could make a plan, and then we could go away and make a plan with health, and then we find out that these guys aren't talking to each other, and their plans don't actually work together. So now we've got to start all over again. And in some cases, that's kind of what's been happening. It's real simple, We're here. My phone's on. Let's do it.
I mean, that sounds like it makes a lot of sense to me. I would assume that all entities involved would come up with a plan and present that to the premier. Yeah. And, he would be comfortable enough to say, well, this makes sense. I'm going to move forward with this. It's cohesive. What is the real fallout for the tourism industry? I have been getting messages all day, all last night, and And I believe, you know, my colleagues as well, they get them because people know we're in the tourism industry. And I guess, for my platform as well. But you've been seeing them flying around all day. I have one here saying that they've had 450 cancellations since last night, and they expect by the weekend that it'll be somewhere 715. That's just one company.
Yeah.
That's one company.
If we go back to those numbers that from the original poll that we did a couple weeks ago, 80% of 2,500, and that's just for the bareboat industry. Now, obviously, we're reassessing now because the goalposts have moved, things have changed, and those numbers are still coming in. But if I take a singular example, I had an owner of a charter company send me an email right before we walked in here, because I have already asked everybody to sort of try and quantify their losses coming from this latest announcement. And he said that he figures his cost will be about 30 million. And the last poll we did, and we do this based on the number of boats each charter company has over the entire number of boats in the industry here. He only represents about 5% of the industry.
Wow.
So it is a huge number, but that's, you know, things happen, losses happen. The bigger issue here is the long-term effect. That's the immediate effect. The marine industry, like I said, people come so they can go to all these different places. And what we found is that the industry has to reach a sort of a critical mass in order to function. If we don't get enough people chartering boats, that a place like Cooper Island Beach Club could have enough people in their restaurant every night to open their restaurant. They don't open their restaurant. And when they don't open their restaurant, less people charter boats. So it's an endless sort of cycle of doom.
And not even talking about, I mean, if you just think on the tourism sector and its impact on the economy, you know, we think that this is a very light thing, but it's not. No. A lot of families survive off of the tourism industry. A lot of families.
Putting aside...
And families they're at their breaking point.
Putting aside the literal thousands of people that are directly employed by the tourism industry.
Yeah.
We then have to think about, like you said, the families, the people that are indirectly affected and the people that are indirectly employed. We don't, you know, in those thousands of people, we count the people that work at the resorts, that work at the charter companies, that work at the services that directly function to support the industry. But that doesn't include people like, you know, the guys at Right Way, that they don't directly serve the industry. But and then we look at the overall effect on the economy. You know, we've got 30,000 people here, but I think we had 2016. They said we had, I want to say, 400,000 overnight visitors in total. So, you know, spread that out on a weekly basis. That is a vast percentage of the population. That drives the volume of the amount of food they bring in, which then controls the price. It controls the selection. And you know, go to Right Way now. Part of it's COVID and the production side of the food, but you can see the prices going up, and you can see the selection going down. And it's not going to get better soon. There is a latent effect on all of this. You know, everything we do now, we're going to feel the ripples of for a while, and that goes back to this long-term effect on tourism. The main thing that we've seen out of this is basically a loss of market confidence. The two major stakeholder groups that I would see here is, one is the tourist. The tourist, you know, the guy that comes here every year or once in a lifetime or whatever, they're a little bit less picky because they're picking something off a list and they're just comparing it all. So next year the list will be different, the comparison will be different. Okay, we can get them back. But in terms of the marine industry, we've also got the boat owner. None of the charter companies own these boats, right? They're all owned by foreign individuals.
Put into a fleet.
Exactly. And they put them into a fleet normally because they can't actually afford to have the yacht without putting it into charter. So they don't have a choice. It's got to charter.
Yeah.
They're not chartering right now. So they've lost confidence. And they're sitting there saying, right, get my asset out of here to somewhere where I can pay the mortgage on it. Because probably at home they're not doing so well either. COVID has affected us all.
Yeah.
And so it's not about loyalty to the BVI, it is about simple business for them. And if we don't have boats, we can't have any tourists. And so, again, one of the things that we tried to relay to Cabinet through the Tourist Board back in May was that while we were trying to assist to work on a plan for reopening then, we said one of the things that we really need to do is just get a message out there. We don't have to make any commitments, but we just have to reassure stakeholders that we have their interests at heart and we're trying to look out for them and we're doing our best, and it's a hard situation. You know, I don't think anybody expected us to be at the front of the pack here leading the way. It would be lovely if we were, and I really wish that we could have reaffirmed that we were the sailing capital of the world by doing this, doing it right, you know, and doing it in good time, let's say. But so, you know, we were asking for that back then and still haven't seen it. I mean, like we said, I mean, the yachting sector is a huge portion of the economy here, and it wasn't even really mentioned last night.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, the information that came out was very general.
Yeah.
It was just general. This is what's going to happen. I said on my show a couple weeks ago, I had Sam Henry on. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I understand.
And we were just talking about the potential of a plan. We didn't know what the plan was going to be. And, you know, I said to Sam, I said, yes, we're going to have to, the government will have to open the seaport. Because I'm very active on social media. I visit all the pages. Information. I go for information. I don't talk off the top of my head. I get my black and white. Anyway, you see the feedback. People want to come here. Like I said, I believe in the BVI tourism products. I believe we have a unique, beautiful product. And I don't expect the numbers, or I didn't expect them. To me, I'm hearing high numbers between now and December. Those are higher numbers than I anticipated.
Well,
that's canceling out.
Yeah.
Right? So I said to Sam, I said, we get hundreds, you know, of passengers coming through St. Thomas for the charter yachts per day.
Yep.
Hundreds. Okay? So I expected that to go down by a bit, but not drastically. So I still felt like we could have had a good season or ending of season, start to a new season.
To be honest, the potential, when I saw the numbers as far as the bookings for December before all this happened, I was pretty shocked.
Yeah, those numbers that you're giving me.
The potential was huge. And keeping in mind that the marine industry, you know, I started out as a captain a long time ago. And it's a pretty small industry. We all talk to each other. We all know each other. And so I've got friends in the Bahamas, friends in Grenada, friends in St. Vincent. And we're all talking to each other. What's going on there? What's working? What's not working? You know, I spoke to a friend up in the Bahamas, and he says, well, they probably got about 10% of the bookings they would normally have until this morning. And so for us, I think we were on a hugely beneficial footing there, provided that we could safely manage it, which I believe that we could. But it's not, we're saying the same thing we were saying back in March. It's not going to happen until we can all do it together.
Yeah.
And we're still not doing it together.
Yeah. It is something that really, it is going to take all of us. I'm a hopeful person. That's naturally who I am. I'm a hopeful person. And so
I guess if I were to put that simply, we just lost more than we can bear. And from my perspective, it was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
We had all of the means, all of the will. We just failed to work together. That's where it fell apart. That's from my personal standpoint. There are others that I'm sure will disagree. But why is that so hard? You know?
I can hear the pain in your voice.
Yeah.
I've had that pain. I've had that pain for the past almost 24 hours. A lot of people that have spoken to me, I hear that pain. and I hear it from the perspective of the economy is crashing or has crashed or has crumbled. What are we going to do? What is the plan? It's more, it's harder than you realize. And you know, this is the feedback. And so you're worried on a lot of fronts. You're worried for our tourism leg. It's a whole part of our economy, and you're worried about the economy, and then you're worried about families and how are they going to eat. You're worried about government because you know we don't have the money to stand. And that is something, it's a side thing for me, but I'm local, so I'm going to say this. I feel like the Premier continues to say we're in challenging times. It's difficult right now. We have to readjust our sales. But somehow, we're just spending money like there's no tomorrow. And the things that need our focus, they're not getting that. And I'm truly worried.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
I mean, it's troubling when I hear things, and most of this is all sort of secondhand because we don't have that primary contact. But I hear things like, oh, well, you know, they're going to expand the testing capacity, but we're not sure because we have to find the money. And it's like, and meanwhile, I've just sat in front of my computer in my office all day and I've watched a ribbon cutting and a groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And it's
basically.
like, well, what are our priorities here?
And I'm going to tell you two things because I think we have to wrap up now. I'm going to tell you two things. I had a call from my son's school, which is the BVI high school, junior high last week. The minister decided who was going back to school and how that was going to happen. And, you know, this teacher is telling me that my son has been absent from class for how many times. Now, one, you wait until the end when school is on midterm break to tell me he has missed however many classes. You should have told me from class 2. Okay, but how am I as a mom going to work? How am I going to monitor my son all the time? Mm-hmm. Okay, the job that I do, I'm not even in one place all the time. So it even becomes difficult. Sometimes I'm in a meeting, I'm just not available. And I said, to add insult to injury, you guys are opening the school for the big kids. The big kids can manage, the little kids can't.
Yeah.
Okay, they can't focus for long. And I don't care what the Minister of Education says. All children are failing. The best of them are failing. Whether they give them a makeup test or whatever, you listen to them, you hear them, they are failing. Okay? And, you know, the teacher says to me, oh, well, we have a problem with the junior school. Okay? We don't have furniture. I said, I'm the wrong parent that you're calling to tell this because that's not a COVID problem. Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Okay, that's been going on before COVID. So we're having all these projects, roads are being built, and you know, money's being diverted everywhere, and we have a problem opening for our schools. I had something come into my inbox today about this system, the tracing and tracking system that was offered to government. You're shaking your head. You may know about this. Okay, it came into my inbox this morning, and it startled me that the government had been offered this system where they didn't have to spend the money to do it, but they went in another direction. So I'm understanding, and this is only my understanding, I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's okay.
I'm understanding that system was a tracking and tracing, and this one that they're building that is supposed to be tracking and tracing is really data management. A
lot of the information we get is, again, secondhand. Mm-hmm. But I do know that there was a private sector initiative to build a custom tracking and tracing system that was specifically for the BVI. It was reported to be, it was going to cost $600,000 to do it.
Right.
And there was a donor within the private sector that was going to fund it. Mm-hmm. So it would have been free to government, and it actually could have been monetized as well in terms of, they had projected that I think it could have generated government just over $1 million a year. How all the inner workings of that works, I don't know. The system that we have, I haven't had a chance to research it yet. But again, the word that is coming back from the people that I would consider to be the experts, is that it, in fact, it's not a tracking and tracing system. It is a data management system. Now, I have to look at that and find out for myself. But I think we've already illuminated just how important and how useful tracking and tracing can be in terms of mitigating our risk from COVID, and therefore allowing us to do other things. I don't. This is one of many things that have, the whole private sector got together and wrote safe working protocols and a whole proposal to open things, which was given to government in June. The problem again is maybe there's a problem with that. Maybe there's something we don't know. Maybe there's a reason that they haven't accepted, but we don't know what it is. So in the meantime, without knowing, that's a big, massive slap in the face because we're sitting here losing everything.
Well, it is, and it is also for us as citizens, again, for that family who's struggling and government is struggling to help families, and you turn down, offers like these. And yeah, they said nothing is ever for free, and I understand that, but we never know what's on the table. And one of the reasons, and we're going to close on that for this evening, one of the reasons is there is no system in place for us to question government. I continue to talk about our freedom of information legislations and good governance legislations, and I am going to talk about them until I am purple or 6 feet or whatever it is. We need these systems in place. We need to be able to ask government questions. We need to be able to figure out, okay, you didn't take this. That was free. We don't know what's on the table. We could have found that out too. But you took this. We don't know how much this costs. We don't know who are the entities involved.
Like you said.
I don't want to say the wrong thing because lots of things come to me, but we need those legislations in place so that we can keep government in check.
And on a simpler level, like you said, last night generated probably more questions than answers again. If there was a Q&A session, even if it was just with the press corps, we might have a little bit more certainty about what's happening. Maybe government is not aware of what our questions are and what we need to know.
I don't think they're interested.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not going to mince my words on that. I don't think they're interested because a few of us have spoken in depth about this before.
Yeah.
Why is it that when government comes to give the public information, the press is not available to ask them questions? Yeah. The press has spoken to me on many occasions, and they can't get the government to speak to them unless they're asking the questions that they want them to ask. And I mean, come on.
If last night was definitive, if it was just, we're not doing this in a way that tourism can function, and that's that, and it was very clear, I think that actually would have been better in the long term for the industry than the questions that still arise. Again, it's not about the immediate effect of yes or no. It's about the long-term confidence, that safety and stability that people have investing in our market. Yeah. And so...
And I feel that the BVI has lost confidence all around. We've lost confidence in our administration, whether they want to believe that or not. If they think that it's a little noise, we've lost confidence. I don't know how they can regain that. The business community, people are afraid to speak out. I understand that, but a lot of confidence have been lost, and this is not going to be the end of this conversation. I'm very sure a lot will happen over the next coming days.
I hope so.
And probably on our next show next Tuesday, we can probably have another show and bring new information forward on this situation. Thank you for joining us tonight, and remember to tune in tomorrow night at 8. So, and view the, I apologize, my mind is elsewhere, and view our special show that we've done for tomorrow night. It's based around our charities that we've been building awareness for October. So thank you, and see you next week.